AMD's ATMP operations were just sold to Fujitsu Microelectronics for $371 million, which gives AMD a bit of a cash injection and helps move them toward becoming properly fabless, which is something they've been trying to do for a number of years now. So this is in line with their original shift to give global foundries their fabrication operations, and now they're moving away their testing, packaging, and basically product assembly applications to this Fujitsu Microelectronics group, which will now own 85% of AMD's stake in the ATMP group. This allows AMD to continue focusing its logistical efforts entirely on engineering and software, and the asset sale gives them a bit of cash, but just for reference, other vendors like NVIDIA and Qualcomm are also effectively fabless, so that's really not that big of a difference at this point with AMD versus some of its major competitors in terms of their fabrication philosophy. Intel remains one of the few juggernauts which still owns fabrication plants entirely on its own, alongside the likes of Samsung. This news is just kind of interesting. So we just got back from PAX East, of course, and the Boston Convention Center this year was upgraded with all Aruba Networks access points and routers, which the ones they use cost about $1,000 each, and they have more than 500 of them deployed at the BCEC. This effort was so that the PAX attendees could actually access wireless internet while inside the convention center. For those of you who haven't been to a convention where gamers are present, it is effectively impossible to use the internet or Wi-Fi normally. So this was a big deal, and it actually did stay up pretty much the whole time. They had more than 36,000 total unique users throughout the weekend. PAX is known to have about 70,000 plus attendees, and there was no major downtime this event, so that's effectively unprecedented for a major gaming convention. Total uplink and downlink bandwidth, just for a fun fact here, the total utilization of network traffic throughout the weekend hit 16.1 terabytes of data, which was processing at nearly 500 megabits per second over the 3-day event. With the more than 36,000 users on the wireless network, peak concurrent traffic broke BCEC records at 15,000 users, all at once, of course, and only 25% of total traffic was used by wired booths like Blizzard with Overwatch or Cliff Studio with Lawbreakers and other games. This news item came out of PAX East, and we already talked about it in depth, but it's the appearance of U.2 connectors on consumer-grade motherboards. So this was done with the Gigabyte boards that we just recently looked at. U.2 is somewhat comparable to M.2. We've got a whole video comparing the two of them if you want to know more, but the basics of it are that U.2 and M.2 both use PCIe lanes for their storage transfer, their protocol, and that is a maximum of 4 lanes per device. So you can have 4 lanes to U.2, 4 lanes to M.2. The major difference here is that U.2 more closely resembles SATA connectors and even SAS connectors on the drive side, which means that they take up less space on the motherboard, so there's less physical space used for the board, unlike M.2, which uses a pretty large footprint, and it's also a double stacked cable. So it's kind of like if you imagine 2 SATA connectors stacked on top of each other on the board. That's what U.2 looks like, but using PCIe, so you've got much greater throughput potential in the span of several gigabytes per second versus the SATA sort of 500 megabytes, 550 megabytes per second limitation. Although the lane assignment is the same between M.2 and U.2, the theoretical maximum speed of U.2 so far has become more saturated than M.2 has offered for consumers, and that's just the nature of having 2.5-inch sized SSDs with the U.2 interface, which is its primary advantage because they're just cheaper and they have higher speed controllers in them for the ones we've seen so far. The U.2 interface looks a bit like the SAS connector on the drive side. It's got extra PCIe lanes over some of the existing options, and the Z170 and X99 HSIO lane architecture means that motherboard vendors can sort of independently determine how many U.2 ports they want on the board. And the last item is pretty quick. Seagate has just begun shipping their 10 terabyte enterprise drives. These are hard drives filled with helium, by the way, to their enterprise clients, and that would include people like Supermicro. Not really consumer targeted at all right now, but these high capacity drives will eventually make it to consumers with or without the helium aspect of it. The drives have 7 platters and 14 heads, and they now even use smart data to tell you when the helium's starting to run out, which really shouldn't happen anytime soon, but is certainly possible. That's all for this week's hardware news recap. Hit the link in the description below for more information. Patreon link, the post-roll video, and thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time.